Good morning, everyone. Slight delay there. Um, I was like, "Oh man, my camera isn't completely zoomed. Not zoomed, but it's not completely focused. It bothers me just a little bit. I really want to change it, but sometimes I make it worse when I change it. Let me see if I can change it. Okay, that could be better or worse. I think it's better. Yes. All right. Thank you guys for joining me, whether you're watching live or the replay. Appreciate you coming in to see what we have going on. It's Friday. Oh my gosh. This was a crazy week. Weeks kind of fly by, don't they? It's like summer. I went for a ride on my motorcycle last night, and it was cold. And I remember when I started in the summer, like it was about cool, it was a little cool and crisp, but it was it was getting warmer quicker. And oh, nice. Okay. I just want to make sure we're on the right page, that I'm on the right page here. I think I'm good. So today I want to talk about kindness. Make sure we're on. There we go. I just think it's a topic that could be talked about a bit more often, could be more addressed. So I'm going to talk about that today, and we'll get into, hopefully we get into some conversation with you guys. We have some people coming in and out. We'll get into some um, conversation around that, but especially at this time of how do you say this time? What's going on? Everything that's going on. It's not. I don't feel like there's a simple solution. There's like nothing's going away. This is, I don't want to get into it too much, but a lot of people like getting like waiting for things to get back to normal, and I don't think things are getting back to normal. Like this is it. This is what it's going to look like, at least for the foreseeable future. And a lot of people are stressed out, like stressed out, and have challenges dealing with emotions, and that's when it's most important to practice that caring, empathy, love, kindness. That's when it's most important, but the that's when it's most important to practice, but that's also when it's the hardest to do. And here's the thing, it's like when it's the holidays, right? So Christmas, you have family, stressful, you have finances, presents, sometimes traveling, and that is the most stressful time of year. And exercise is the number one way to reduce stress, but it's also the least amount of time people work out. It's kind of funny. And then, but then of course, you have summer as well. Most people, a good number of people don't really work out in the summer because of camping and traveling and spending time with friends and family. But that's the same as holidays. Like when you have, or sorry, that's the same. Yeah, the holiday season. That's the same as Christmas, for example. Good morning, True Lifers. Good morning to you, Anna. How are you doing this morning? Thanks for joining me. Dorothy's at school, as many of you know. She's teaching grade one this year, so it's been a crazy couple weeks getting her ready to go back. But she had kids the last 2 days, and then today, and then they have the long weekend, which no one can really understand why they started school before the long weekend to give them another 3 day break and then a short week. But maybe that's a nice transition, just a couple days break and then part of a week and then a full week after that. I don't know. It's not really for me to decide, but that's what happens. Good morning, Sue. Thank you for joining us. Hey, Stu, I got a quick question for you. I know you're doing like a little palette thing, but for Dorothy, I think I'm not really involved with that, but I see all these pallets around, and that's my like business brain of like there's pallets everywhere, and wood like, and then everyone's complaining about how much wood is, like wood costs, and then I see all the pallets that are being like thrown away or stuffed behind business buildings, and I'm like, why aren't more people making stuff out of pallet? Like the pallet, it's a different wood. Like the wood from the pallet is still wood. Can you make stuff with it? Because if wood is too expensive to buy or build, suppose you couldn't like build a house out of pallets, or maybe you could. I don't know. It's just that's just me being like, why can't they? Like, don't those two things add up? So I was just comparing the two. Like, we need to exercise to reduce stress, right? But in at the holidays, most stressful time of year, people don't. But it's the same thing right now. It's the same. I feel like it's the same thing right now. Is a good majority of our population is stressed out for whatever reason. Like, of course, there's back to school, and then we have our economic situation where I feel like there's a lot of people torn, and there's a lot of separation, which causes anxiety. And now we have the inability to find that love and compassion and empathy that I want to talk about today. It's an interesting paradigm and how that works, because it's like they conflict, and I relate most things to food and exercise because that's what we do. But I mean, it's the same thing at the grocery store, right? Like during the holidays when you should be eating healthier and cleaner because our stress is so high, that's when we go and we buy the pies and pastries and refined sugar, right? So we have to kind of flip that around. We have to make better choices. And I think when it comes to understanding and anger and frustration, like with friends or family members, it's something that most of us don't practice. Like it's not something you learn in school. It's not something that, I mean, you could read books and learn about it, but it's not something that we openly work on and practice. And I think we would be much better off if we did. But that it's really that understanding of trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes, which is challenging, of course, but try to see the situation from someone else's perspective. Usually we have so much tunnel vision. Like it's all about me. It's that ego. I don't know if anyone's a Eckhart Tolle fan, but he talks about the id. I haven't read his book for quite a while. Id, ego, and superego, I think. Or that could have been Freud. I studied Freud in university. Actually loved it. I'll tell you this quick story. I'll tell you, I'll answer that in a second too, but I'll tell you this quick story. I was in university, and it was my graduation year. And early on in university, they stick you with the worst courses. Like you have to get up super early, and like 7 a.m. was early for me at that time. So you have to get up really early. You have to run across campus, like from one class to the other. And like they just don't do anything like you're a freshman or like it was your first or second year, whatever. Like I went to junior college for 2 years first and then university. So, but some people go straight to university. At any rate, early on in college or university, they give you it's kind of funny. Like it doesn't really make sense. As I got to my graduation courses in my last year of university, they gave you it was like the courses were easier. Like there was more group discussions, there was less exams, there was more freedom, I felt like. And I was never a good student. I was a horrible student. I couldn't stand school and sitting in a desk. But as I progressed in my schooling, became a better student. But I still struggled in high school. But then I got to college and I was like, this isn't so bad. I could pick some of my own courses. I actually enjoyed some of the things I was doing. And then I went to university. I wouldn't say I didn't love every class, but I really enjoyed the freedom of like, in most cases, the teachers were like, get your work done or don't. Like if you don't, you're gonna fail. And then like in high school, they're like holding your hand and they're like, no chewing gum in class, take your hat off. And I'm like, don't we have other things to worry about? And then I got to university and that's what it was like. It was like, this is your class. Like they didn't, and for the most part, like they didn't really care if you showed up, how often you showed up. And I did really well. I thrived. I was at the top of my class in some of my courses. I remember we were doing this one class that stood out because it didn't happen very often, but it was social statistics, and it was like it actually helped in business a little bit. This is one of my very few business type of courses that helped later on in life, but it was like studying the population of if this amount of wasn't math, what kind of math, but if this amount of the population purchases something, then you have to do you can manipulate this part of the population super boring. But they like one formula was 3 boards on the wall, and I figured that out a couple times over, not like different problems like that, and people were coming to me and they're like, "Hey, how did you figure that out?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have no idea. I can't explain this to you." But at any rate, I became a better student when I had more freedom. Obviously, as an entrepreneur, I have a really hard time if someone gives me a structure and they're like, "You have to learn this way. You have to do it this way." But if you throw something at me and you're like, "Figure this out," I can do it. So in the later course of the university, that's how it was like. It was like get your classes, get your papers done. Of course, we had exams, but study it was a lot more written stuff, and I became a better writer through practice. And this one professor, I actually tried to get out of his class. So going back to my initial story of talking to my counselor, and I was like, I told her, I said, hey, I'm a senior now. And I said, when I was a freshman, I took all those early classes running across campus. I was like, I'm not doing that this year. I was like, hook me up. And she really liked me. We had a nice connection. And I was like, hook me up with some good classes because, and like, and good professors. I was like, I've been here long enough. I'm ready to get out. I just wanted to graduate. Like that's all I wanted to do was get out of school. so so she was doing a good job making me happy. And then I got this one professor and I sat down and he was like very stern, and he was like he wanted you to show up and you had to participate in class discussions. And I was like, oh man. So I went to her and I was like, I got to get out of this class. I was like, this guy is too much for me. So she was like very confused. She was like, are you sure? She said people are trying to get into his class, or there's a lineup to get in, or and like I hear really good feedback about this guy. And I was like, no, 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 he's not for me. I got to get out. So they give you a grace period. I think this was quite a while ago, and so you can join a class and then you have so long to drop it or exchange it. And I needed that class to graduate. Otherwise, it was going to be online, and I wasn't really doing anything online. Like it's much different now, but I wasn't interested in sitting in front of a computer desk. Thanks, Anna. I'll get to that in a second. Get to your comment in a second. But so I sat. So you had a grace period. So I sat there for a couple sessions, and I was like, meh. Then I sat there for a couple more, and I was like, kind of like this. And then it was like more group discussion. It was a debate, and I don't have a problem debating or sharing my opinion. Anyways, it's a funny story because I absolutely loved the class and the professor. Like we had a nice connection. He enjoyed my participation. Um, I remember doing it. So they gave you this. They gave you it was like some kind of psychology course. I think I studied. I majored in criminal justice and sociology. So a lot of it was to deal with the brain, or when it was to do with it was to do with if it was a criminal justice part of it, then it was like studying more of the mind or psychology. That's why I talked about Freud. I had those types of classes of criminals, which I really enjoy. And I'm still infatuated with the brain and how we make decisions and why we do certain things. So it's just funny how, in most cases, it didn't translate to business or what I do full time. At any rate, so I told this long, drawn out story. We had this group discussion, and I'm always think outside the box. I've always been like that. So we had this group discussion, and I was just like, I was throwing these crazy ideas out there, and I was like, and we had like everyone. We had to break down the story of like what it meant and how it was perceived and maybe symbolization. So this guy was like hallucinating. This guy was like walking down this road and he was hallucinating, and then he ends up at a house and he doesn't really know what he's doing at the house. So, my gosh, I haven't thought about this story in a long time. But I said, okay, the guy's on drugs. And he ended up in some like field because he was eating mushrooms all night. I'm in university, remember? So and then he like stumbled. Then he's trying to get more drugs, so he stumbles up onto the porch of this other house, and the house ends up being a drug dealer's house. So he's trying to find more um, meds to keep him going, so he doesn't have to sleep. It was this crazy, long, drawn out, and everyone understand like this is a graduate course, and everyone's a bit more, I don't know, like intellectual, and they're like trying to do everything perfect and trying to make the professor happy. And then everyone's like, okay, like no one really likes to participate in those group discussions. I loved it. So everyone like kind of thought I was a bit crazy. This was early on in the year. We didn't really know each other that well, and everyone's like, okay, like whatever, but you're telling the story because you have to pick one person. Like everyone was supposed to contribute, but no one really contributed. Everyone just sat there. You have to pick one person to share the story of how you perceived, and then you make up exactly what happened. So I stand up in front of the class, and the guy was like super like, our professor was like very like professional, and like he always had like a tie and like iron shirts, and like he was like like almost like authoritative, like very stern with. So I get up and I tell the story of like this drug, and everyone else is like, oh, he must have had mental health issues, or he must have had issues at home, so he was running away trying to find a happier place. And I was talking about how he's on drugs, stumbling around trying to find more drugs. And the professor and everyone else's story was like very similar. And the professor asked me to stay after class, and he said, I absolutely loved your story. He said, no one has come up with anything that original. Everyone was pretty much the same. And he said, we've been doing this story for years. And he's like, he basically said it was so nice to have a different perspective. Oh my gosh. That makes me laugh. Okay, what do we got here? Sue says it's the work involved. Some have chemicals on them. I enjoy ripping this apart and using my mind to invent. I was talking about, those of you that may have just jumped in here, I was talking about the pallets. Like I really think you can do something with the pallets. That's just my perspective. I'm not really a woodworker, but I feel like they can be used because there is a lack of wood. So, and that's wood. At any rate, thanks for sharing that, Sue. And then let's see what Anna says. Anna says we really need to look at reducing inflammation in many aspects of life. Certainly in unhealthy, low-quality processed food and drink, sedentary lifestyle, stressors such as relationships, as well as inflammation, political, economical, workplace, media, toxic chemicals, and personal and cleaning products. Yes, we need to look at our whole life. Anna, I think that's what you're getting at. The list goes on. We need to reduce inflammation. Yeah, and it's all about holistic lifestyle. That's what we do. You're 100% with us. I'm on the same page as you. So that's when it comes to us. Now that my college or university story is over, we can get back to the topic at hand. But yeah, it's 100%. It's a holistic lifestyle. It's everything. And when I say holistic, I think some people get turned off a bit because they're like more conventional medication treatment, which is fine. But when I mean, like when I say holistic, I often mean it's a holistic approach. It's your whole lifestyle. It's everything. In many cases, people look at one thing. I remember as a trainer, like as a personal trainer coming up, people would often say, how do I target my triceps? Or I want to lose some weight right on my hips here. And I'm like, we could just do tricep exercises, which are going to get terribly boring. Or we could just work on your waistline. But you need to look at your holistic approach, like your whole lifestyle. And that's how I feel like that's how I stood out, because most trainers are like, okay, we'll help you lose weight. And I mean, everyone says that. And then very few can help you deliver, because like very few can deliver on that, because if you don't change your lifestyle, losing weight is a byproduct of living a healthy lifestyle. I always say that. You don't wake up and say, can't wait to lose weight today. So you have to find things that fit in your lifestyle that are enjoyable. So it's the same thing with this topic of the frustrations of life. Like everything happening right now is causing issues. It's causing problems in families and friends, and it's causing that separation. And we have to look at our lifestyle. We have to understand that this is how it is right now, and we have to find a way to deal with it. I feel like a lot of people are kind of holding their breath or waiting for things to change or things to get better. And I don't really feel like that's the proper way to go about it, just because like we have to be prepared. Like, what if this is how life is? Like how long is it going to be like? It's already been, at least at the time of this recording, it's been a year and a half. So instead of waiting and waiting, we have to prepare now, and we have to have a different mindset, and then we have to practice that compassion and empathy. And we don't know what's happening in other people's lives. We really don't. And some people could be going through a very stressful time. The only stipulation there, I suppose, is like, I don't think because you're stressed out, you have the right to treat people less than. Or like, I know like stress is crazy. Like stress makes people do all kinds of crazy, crazy things. And I don't mean that to put them down. I just mean like the ability for some people, for most of us, to be able to deal or cope with stress is very difficult. Like most people can't really handle. They don't know what to do. Like we weren't conditioned to. Like, back in the day, we were chasing animals. That's where we have the fight or flight. Like you actually had to fight an animal for food or for survival, or you ran away, and that's in us. Like innately, we're born with that. So we don't have that. Like it's a different world. You sit in front of a computer, and then like someone comments on your blue hair, or someone comments on how they don't like your face, and then how do you, and you get a little bit, and then you get your emotions get pressed down a little bit, and then you're like, well, what's wrong with me? And then your mind starts going crazy, and then you're like, oh, and you watch the news, which is always a bad idea in my opinion. And then you hear like, oh, my friend doesn't want to hang out with me because of this, and then it just piles up, and we don't have any way to release that. We don't have any way to deal with our body naturally. Like our lungs, for example, like our heart and lungs work together to help us breathe, right? We don't have a natural function in our body to deal with stress. And the problem is if we don't take any action, or if we don't take any steps towards that, that stress just keeps building up, and it makes our minds go a little bit crazy. Our minds turn into moods and emotions, which then addresses our physical body. And then if you want me to go even deeper, is that I feel major disease in our body starts with stress. It's like a seed, a thought, and then it becomes words, and then it becomes actions, and then before you know it, we're dealing with these major diseases in our body. I say disease. I share this often, but anytime you have a disease, you have dis-ease in your body. I think it's easier for us to understand. It's disease. It's not this big scary word of disease. Our bodies tell us things. So when we're stressed out, our body does things like maybe we have these thoughts in our mind that aren't usually there. Maybe they're angry thoughts or frustrated thoughts that aren't usually there. Your body's telling you something. If you start limping around, your body's telling you something. It's not telling you that you're going to have to limp forever. It's saying, hey, something needs to be addressed. And if that's not addressed, something else is going to start to happen physically on our body. So if your right side, right hip, ankle, knee starts bothering you, and you start limping, you put more pressure on the other side, then sooner or later that side's going to be like, hey, why do I got to take the full load? So that other side's going to start bothering you too. And all that is communication between your body and your mind. It's like, hey, we got to do something to fix this. But the problem is that we don't pay attention to our body. Like we don't see what's going on. Like we don't like pay attention to what's really happening. I'm reading this really good book, and he says it's Pete Egoscue, and he has this whole not new, but a whole training method of healing yourself, basically. And he was saying that be the CEO of your health. I just thought that was cool as a business owner. I was like, oh, that's a great way to look at it. Like, be in control of your own health. And unfortunately, many people are waiting for someone else to help them. And don't get me wrong, I feel like, well, in most cases, we'll all need some other help or care at some point. But to be in control of your own health, and understand that you have a choice to decide how you're going to act, how you're going to behave, how you're going to be, how you're going to respond, and how you're going to treat your body, mind, and life as a whole. realistically, how you're going to treat yourself as you live your life, as you age, as you get older, as you feel younger. I was watching this clip of this guy. He was he said he was 50 years old, and he looked good, like he was like a bit muscular, and one of the guys says, "You look fantastic," and they were talking about age and how 50 is like really old. And I don't feel like age has anything to do with how old you are, my personal opinion. But he's just saying, "Oh, I'm really old." And the guy's like, "Well, you look fantastic," and he's like, "I feel fantastic." He said, "I'm taking great supplements. I'm eating right. I'm working out." And he's like, I don't know what he said. He's 50, 55 years old. And he said, "I never felt better." And I just thought that was such a breath of fresh air, because so many times you hear people getting a bit older and they're like, oh, that's just age, or, "Oh, I'm getting older." And I'm like, are you doing anything about that? And then, of course, but then the thing is, you take that accountability away from your actions. You take the accountability away. You're just like, oh, that's not anything I can do about that. There's nothing I can control. And in most cases, I feel like you can always do something. And if it's not physically, often it's your mindset, like something that you can do for your mind and body. And that's the whole thing about this empathy conversation that I want to address here, is that we don't know, like I was saying, we don't know what other people are going through. We don't know what they're dealing with in their life. So we can try to be a bit more compassionate and understanding. I think trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes is something that is difficult for a lot of people, but very beneficial if you can do that. If you can say, hey, this person may be feeling this because, or if I was in that situation, I may be feeling the exact same way. And then you can understand. And then if you can understand someone's situation, you can communicate a little bit better. You have more of an open mind, and you can maybe even feel their feelings of frustration, maybe why they're holding back, why they have feeling like they have some issues going on. But if there's no, in most cases, disagreements are around communication, lack of communication, and how people feel about one another, or about how they feel in a situation. That's in most cases is communication issues. Like, a lot of people shut down completely. They don't want to talk. Yeah, I heard this really good quote. I think it was from Tim Ferriss. And he said, you can tell, what did he say? It was something along these lines. This isn't verbatim, but he said something like, you can tell the success of someone by the amount of difficult conversations they're willing to have. Or the more difficult conversations you're willing to have, the more successful you'll be. Something like that. But I just thought that was so true in many cases. Of course, it is in business. Like, you have to negotiate, and you have to work through problems, and you have to be a problem solver, and you have to find solutions. But then in personal life as well, like, we don't want to have those difficult conversations. We don't want to sit down and be like, I mean, I certainly don't. We don't want to sit down and be like, okay, how can we hash this out? How can we find a solution? And like, it could be with anyone. It could be with friends or family. It could be a business partner. And like, just like making yourself sit down and getting through those issues is a challenge. Like, we don't want that to happen. We just want to push everything under the rug and be like, nah, things will work themselves out. Things will work themselves out. And unfortunately, they rarely do. They usually don't work themselves out until you actually sit down. And in most cases, like, we wait for our stress levels or anxieties to get like really high. And then we don't know how to function, and we don't know how to deal with them. Then we blow up, and we have these big arguments, and we say things that we may not want to be saying or probably shouldn't be saying. But I think that begins with understanding the other person and trying to figure out, or not figure out, but try to figure out how they see things. But then again, we have, I also think it goes back to controlling your own emotions and understanding that in most cases we are grown-ups. We have to control our own emotions and understand that anger and that frustration and lashing out isn't really going to solve anything. In most cases, it makes it worse. Might make you feel better for a moment, but in most cases, it's not really going to do anything for you. It's certainly not going to fix any situation. So when it comes to when it comes to healing those relationships or creating better relationships, I think that's at the very root, is having open doors of communication and talking about the difficult subjects, but then also trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes and understanding that they may be going through a difficult time, which may not even be related to you. I remember this one time, this might be slightly different, but I remember this one time I was going to a radio station, and you have to book your time, and it could be expensive. And other people are waiting to get in there, and it was just down the street, and these two people got in a little fender bender. They didn't know what to do. They stopped in the middle of the road, and it was a very odd situation. And I was actually walking to the local radio station here, and they stopped in the middle of the road, and they were like confused. They didn't know what to do, and like and I'm like walking to when I see them, and they're like kind of confused walking around. There's cars passing by, and then I get closer, and then I said, "Hey, is everyone okay?" And then one of them, I gotta call the police. I don't have a phone, so I said, "Okay, here's the phone." I said, "You guys should really think about moving your vehicles out of the road." No, like completely defensive, like probably like a bit confused, angry. No, I'm not moving my car anywhere. Like everything was the other person's fault at this point. So I said, "Okay." I said, "Here's my phone." So I waited there on the sidewalk for about 15 minutes. So I was 20 minutes late, whatever it was. And the police showed up, and they said, "Move your cars from the middle of the road right now." So that was the first thing they did, for obvious reasons. Like, it's dangerous, and they don't want another issue on top of that. So anyways, I get there, and then they're upset at the station. I go, "You're late. What were you doing?" And then there was like that initial clash of like, like, what are you doing? People are waiting. You got to be here on time. And then if I didn't explain that, so some people don't say anything. And I thought about not saying like, "Hey, I was helping someone out." Like, okay. Like, I thought about being like, "Hey, I'll do better to get here next time. I know it's my fault. I'll take full accountability." And then later on in the conversation, I said these two people needed help. They're using my phone. And then it was like, and then they relaxed a bit. They're like, "Oh, okay, I understand. Maybe I shouldn't have got so upset." So it worked out through that communication, but you don't know why someone was late. Like, you may want to sit down and have a conversation of like, "How's your day going? Is there any reason?" Especially as an employee, I would do that. Like, "Is there any reason that you showed up like a half hour late when you're supposed to be here on time?" "Oh yeah, this and this happened." If it's one thing, like, I think we use those as excuses often, like, to take that accountability from yourself. So the first thing you could do is like, "I know it's my job to be here on time regardless of what happens, but this is what happened." Like, obviously, if it happens like every day, like the dog ate my homework, that's one thing. But if it's one thing that comes up and it's like, okay, obviously that situation where someone is urgently needs a cell phone, it's not going to happen very often. But again, you can't use that stuff as an excuse all the time. Like, if you're late all the time and you always have a reason, then we got some problems, right? um, but if you guys have any questions or comments on this topic, feel free to throw them at me, and we'll talk about them together. But so when I was talking about understanding, like, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, the other thing is like, for us, when we go through frustrating times, I feel like we have to work on reducing our stress levels all the time. So many times people only address stress, like difficult times in their life, as a treatment. So, okay, things are difficult. I gotta go get help. I gotta start working out. I gotta talk to someone. I gotta go see a psychologist. Like, whatever it is, that's only when they're stressed out. But what if you did that on a regular basis? Like, what if you're always working out? So let's say, for example, our stress level is here all the time. Like, our stress level is always here. Like, we don't really do much about it. And then a stressful time comes up in our lives and stress goes here. So then we start to do things like I just said. So we start to slowly reduce our stress, and then we stop here, right? But it's still up here on a regular basis. So what if you're What if our stress is like around here, and then we started to work out, and maybe you have a counselor, you have someone you could talk to, friends or family, and then maybe you're putting good quality foods in your body. So your stress is here on a regular basis. So when something stressful comes up, it only goes up to here. So you're still in control of your emotions. You're still in control of the words you say, the thoughts you think. Like we all know what it's like to go in a downward spiral of being like, I can't control anything. I'm losing my mind. So if your stress level is up here on a difficult day, you don't always have to worry about being through the roof. But the thing is we have to continually try different things to reduce our stress levels and live that holistic lifestyle in prevention as opposed to treatment. So if you're working out regularly, your stress levels are going to drop. So instead of being like, okay, only reason I'm got to work out is because summertime's coming, I got to get in my bikini, or Christmas is coming, I got to get in that little black dress. So, and don't get me wrong, there's positives to setting those little goals for yourself, for those little achievements. But if it's only for a short term, so here's what happens is a lot of people come to us in the spring. I always say January, February is not our busiest time, but after that we get a little bit busier and busier right before summer comes, and then everyone's camping and vacationing. So then summer comes and they work so hard to get to get fit, wearing less clothes, summer dresses, whatever it is. And then throughout the whole summer, stop working out, stop eating right, stress levels go up a bit. You're staying later, visiting with friends, stress level goes up, and then stress levels here, and then back into your regular routines. Then we have kids going back to school, and then we have more economic, political situations going crazy right now. And then that's where we have people that really don't know how to deal with what's going on in the world. Like, then we hold on. We're here, and we're like, okay, our stress level's up here, and we're like, okay, it's going to get better. It's going to get better, but we're not doing anything about it. We're just hanging on like things are going to get back to normal. I just got to do this for a little bit longer, instead of taking action for yourself and lowering your stress levels through different ways. So I mean, that's one thing that you can do for yourself to offer that empathy and compassion, because just think about yourself being super stressed out. Like, the more stressed out we are, the less patience we have with ourselves and others. The quicker we are to lash out, the quicker you are to yell at your dog, your kid, your spouse. So the more stressed out we are, the less ability we have to be understanding for other people, which is why we need to continually reduce our stress levels, bring those stress levels down, and then be able to have those conversations and communicate properly. Because if we're not able to communicate, that's where those issues stem from, and then they just continue to pile up and get worse and worse until there's a giant blow up. And then I don't know, like usually that blow up, like you get here and here, and you have like a big meltdown, and maybe you have a big argument at the office or at home, and then things seem to get okay. They let the air out of the balloon. Things seem to get back to normal, and then all of a sudden, it builds back up because we're not doing something continually to help reduce those stress levels and to help improve your health, which will, in that holistic manner, will help everyone as a whole. I feel like I've been talking a lot. Woo! That was a lot. Excuse me. I saw Ben jump in here. Morning, Ben. I'm not sure who's in here now, but I do appreciate you guys coming in. Some of these shows, I still like to do these shows regardless of who's here, but sometimes we repurpose them as a radio show. So we'll throw this up on. Some of you may know about Exploring Mind and Body. Some of you could be podcast listeners, maybe not, but we throw this up on Exploring Mind and Body. And so Exploring Mind and Body is a nationally syndicated radio show. We're all across the world. Ben says good morning. Good morning to you, Ben. And then that also goes out as a podcast all around the world. So some of you are listening. That goes out on Apple Music, I think they call it now. And they also put it up on Spotify. Any of your podcasting platforms, we throw it up. So if you miss any of these lives, you can go and listen to them there. And then, of course, we take some of these snippets. Like, so we'll take some of these snippet videos and throw them up on social media as well. So we try to repurpose. You're welcome, Anna. Thank you for, Anna says that is some really great perspective and advice, Drew. Thank you. You're welcome, Anna. It's my pleasure. Thank you for hanging out with me this morning. Yes, I think it's important to repurpose. That's what we do as well. So we because not everyone's going to see this, right? And then not everyone's going to, that's not working out. Not everyone's going to see this show. Then not everyone's going to hear the podcast. Not everyone's going to watch different clips. We try to be everywhere. I'm not sure if I have much more to share on that topic. I think like for now, as we wrap things up here, for now is trying to be compassionate and understanding through other people and understand that everyone's going through a difficult time right now. Like some people are a little bit better than others. Some people are much worse than others. Like that's life. But we need to take action and not let those emotions take over, like take control. I feel like the worse they get, like the deeper we dig ourselves into a hole, it's the harder it is to dig ourselves out. Like it really is. And you can tell how people are, like people are reacting much more differently these days. Like it's easier to set people off. It's easier to get in an argument. It's easier to disagree with someone. Like, and that comes from, I feel like it comes from lack of compassion. It comes from lack of understanding and just trying to be in a loving and caring place. And I mean, of course, I'm not always there myself. I'm no saint, that's for sure. But I feel like it's something we can all work on. And that's something I try to say to myself, I think to myself is that, hey, maybe they're going through a difficult time. Or I think like, why are they saying those things? Why are they posting those words? Like, even if it's not directed at anyone in particular, you see people doing some really odd things and you can only get like very like out of character, almost out of body. Like, did they actually say those things? And you can only guess that they're going through a really difficult time in their life, and in hope like maybe if you deal with them, you be a bit more patient with them, and you can think good thoughts for them and hope that things get better for them. You could even offer help. You know, the thing is, sometimes in difficult situations, it's some people, they don't want help. Like some people don't want help. Some people don't want to change. It's really difficult. Sometimes you can do everything for a person. Like you can be kind to them, you can be compassionate, and then they can lash out at you. Like but I think that's the stress, and that's the inability to cope and reduce that stress. And in most cases, you talk to people and you ask them how they're doing in their life and what's happening, what's going on, and their stress levels through the roof. But then you can also look at what they've been doing. Like, oh, I haven't really been exercising, I haven't really been eating right, because life takes over, right? Like things could be difficult at home, things could be difficult at school, things could be difficult with other family members, at work, whatever it is. And then you push that other stuff to the side. Like, well, I can't handle going grocery shopping, I got to do this at home. Or I can't handle doing this extra work at work, I got to go home and address this. So then you have that, like it is like, you can't, there's no other way to put it. Like this exercise is the best way to reduce stress, and there's less people exercising now. And then you have closures and shutdowns and gyms not even open. Half people aren't going to work out at home. So it's just a difficult position to be in, a difficult place to live in right now. And trying to exercise that extra compassion, I think, will make a big difference, not just for the other people, but for ourselves as well. Maybe we won't be so frustrated. You know, finance is a big one as well. Like people do crazy things. Like people will go rob a liquor store if they can't feed their families. I remember sitting there. I'll read these comments in a second. Thank you guys very much for your comments. I was in university in the States, and we were having this conversation, and this one guy was trying to explain, he was from a very rough area, and he was trying to explain that. So he wasn't justifying it. I felt like I could side with him a bit, and this other lady was like, oh, well, why don't they just go and panhandle or find money somewhere else? and And the guy was talking about going to rob a liquor store. Not him, but in his community it happened. And he was trying to explain like when you have nothing, you have, and most of us will never experience that because we have friends to help out, we have family. Like you have nothing, and I've never experienced nothing at this level before I went to Sri Lanka, when some people had like dirt floors and they had a little bowl of food and they wanted you to eat it, and they had nothing to eat, but they wanted you to eat it. That what I would call nothing. So the guy was trying to explain, when you have nothing and you have bills and people relying on you to feed your family, you have nothing. That pressure weighs on you so much you do irrational things. So he said sometimes people do crazy things and they go rob liquor stores, and he was just trying to explain it. He wasn't saying that it's right or wrong. But she was like, well, why don't they just go borrow money from family? Like, because family's in jail. Right? How's that for an answer? And again, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying, like, when our stress is at its peak, our mind isn't working the way it usually works, and then we do things that doesn't really add up. It's out of character, and then we don't have a whole lot of compassion in the world right now. I feel like there's more separation, and there's higher powers that maybe, just maybe, turning us on one another. So it's like it's through the roof right now. And if we could find a way to be a bit more understanding, I feel that we could get through this together, not separately or individually. Sue says loving yourself is important. Yes, 100%. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to love ourselves enough to put ourselves first. And I know that that's difficult, often difficult for caregivers, for parents, for women in particular. We work with a lot of women. They do for their spouse, usually their husband. They do for their kids or grandkids first, driving kids around, whatever it is. They're preparing for everybody else but them. So for me to say you have to put yourself out, you have to put yourself first, it's such a foreign concept. It's like, no, I'm a provider. I give that to my family first. But I always say, if you have nothing left in your cup to give, then you're not providing for them. You're just kind of getting by. Morning, Mom. Thanks for jumping in here. Ben says, lack of empathy and forgiveness. You never know what someone is dealing with. Absolutely. Yes, 100%. That's what we've been talking about, is, the challenges that everyone's going through. Everyone is in a different place in their life. Everyone has it. I feel like we all struggle. Like we all struggle at different times in our life. Some just struggle more than others. So you don't know how bad things are in someone's life. So if you could try to understand what they're going through, then maybe there could be a bit more peace. Sue says sometimes they don't know how to change. Yeah, 100%. 100%. And that's the thing. It's easy to sit here and talk about it and have the conversation, but there has to be action involved. And it's not just one or two things. It's not like one thing's going to change your life. It's all the little things. Like you have to keep working at it. And like you watch, that's how I kind of started out in self-help. What's funny is that I used to chew tobacco. Like I don't know, like that's who I was. I did everything. Like I played baseball. Like baseball was life. I had pine tar everywhere. So if you don't know what pine tar is, you rub it on your bat, and then you put your hand on it to make your bat sticky so you have grip. We had wooden bats. I had pine tar everywhere, and I had eye black, and I had like dirt and shale, and I kind of prided myself on being like it was always dirty at the end of the game. And then in most cases, chewing tobacco, that was part of the game. Like most people did that. The smell of it now makes me want to vomit, by the way. But I did that for years. So and we did that. Like you sit in the hotel room and you play video games and you chew tobacco. Like that's what we did. So when I got home, like in between seasons, I would sit there at home and I'd play video games and I'd chew tobacco by myself. I know it's gross, but it's the truth. It's just being honest here. So then what I started to do is I would play video games with tobacco And then I'd turn on YouTube and I'd listen to motivational speakers and like self-help. So I'd listen to Jim Rohn, I'd listen to Anthony Robbins. Um, there's a couple others that usually stand out, but so then I was changing my mindset, right? So then I was like, that's unbelievable. So then I was changing my mindset a little bit. So then I was like, okay, maybe I don't need tobacco, because they talk about every mind, body, emotions, food, nutrition. Actually went to see Anthony Robbins live, and it was kind of funny. One of the first things he did is he says, okay, who works out once a week? So everyone who works out once a week puts their hand up. And then he says, oh no, sorry, he said stand up. He said stand up to anyone who works out once a week, stand up. So he stands up. So we stand up, and there's like most of the room. And then he says, anyone who works out twice a week, stand up. Sorry, I'm not doing a great job with this story. What? Stand up? No, sorry. He got everyone to stand up. That's better. He got everyone to stand up, and then he's like energy. He's running around the room, and he's a big man with a deep voice. So he's like, everybody stand up. So everybody stands up, and then he says, if you work out once a week, stay standing. Everyone else sit down. So a few people sit down. And if you work out 3 days a week, if you work out 3 days a week, stay standing. Everyone else sit down. So more of the room sits down. And then he says, if you work out 6 days a week, stay standing. Everyone else sit down. And you get, of course, 6, 7 days. And then you get around, and then you look around, and he says, look around the room. Look around the room. And obviously, the fittest people were standing. Like, most people were fit. These were all, like, in most cases, these were people who had ties. I was there in a hoodie. I'm just kidding. I might have had like a golf shirt on. But these people were executives. And it was like an expensive course. And the people were like self-help and hoorah. So he says, look around the room, and everyone that is still standing, what do they look like? And he's just trying to make a very simple comparison of like, if you work out 6 days a week, you're going to look fit and healthy. And that's, of course, that's what happened. All these good-looking executives that were standing there fit and healthy. So then, of course, that's easy. Of course, we know that it's easy to understand. Like, we know that if you're working out on a regular basis, you're going to look fit. The problem is bridging the motivation and knowledge to make that happen, which is also what he talked about. Anyway, so I'm sitting there and I was like, oh, maybe I don't need tobacco so much. I want to be healthier. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I don't need video games. So I played less and less video games until I mostly stopped. So then I would sit there and I'd watch YouTube videos, and then it was like, oh, read a book. You got to read a book. You got to read from a book every day. So I learned that from these guys. So I started reading. So it was a slow transition, but you move from unhealthy habits, from tobacco to video games to, I would drink on the weekends at that time too. So it's a progression. So then I don't drink anymore. You have a beer once a month. So so then you stop drinking alcohol, and then you read from a book, and then you start exercising, and you start putting cleaner foods in your body. So that was all a progression. But again, that's something that you have to work towards, and it needs to be a holistic approach. It needs to be something that you work toward and build on. And like I said, everyone started out somewhere. Like people, what's funny is that I go in, a lot of my friends from college, a lot of the ones that I grew up with are in LA, and they often ask, like, how did you get from like college partying days to where you are now? Now you teach people. I said, well, I always say, like, nothing happened overnight. It was a slow progression, and we always made small changes, which is what we teach. We make small changes to improve your health and change your lifestyle as a whole, and then the results will come. And then we also teach, you don't fall in love with the outcome. You don't fall in love with the results. You fall in love with the action. So once you start to enjoy cooking in the kitchen and making a salad, once you start to enjoy, it doesn't have to be working out. You can start to enjoy riding your bike, going for a jog, playing with the park with your kids or your dog. Once you enjoy that activity, you start to see results. And I think that's where it really comes in. Like those results really start to set in once you change your lifestyle and once you start to do those things on a regular basis and it's not a chore. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about that. But I do want to let you guys go. I'm trying to be here around an hour, and we're getting to the top of the hour. So thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate your time. And if you're watching the replay, you can let us know you're watching the replay, and you can check out all our videos. We're on YouTube, of course. All these videos go up on YouTube, youtube.com/trueformlife, so you guys can check out videos there. That's it. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. It's a long weekend, so if you're going camping, enjoy your camping trip. And if you're sticking around, I think there's a lot of people still gardening, getting their food in. I know Anna is, and Sue, you got your garden going too. So enjoy your gardening or enjoy your camping trip, whatever it is you're doing, and we'll catch up with you another time. Have a great day, everyone.